93, 93, 93. You already know who it is. Amon Ashwanu. We back in here for Friday the 13th degree in the 11th month. So let's put some science behind all of this numerology that many of us feel but may not understand. Because on the surface of the 13 is considered bad luck. We have this energy of it is a unlucky energy or a unlucky number, especially here in the West. So immediately, every time this comes around, and it comes around a couple times a year, it depends on the year. So every time we hit the degree of Friday the 13th, if in the unconscious of the people, they feel it is a unlucky number, so much so that they take it to the degree of not even having a 13th floor in certain buildings just because of a superstition. That gives us the ability to dig into it a little deeper to find out what is the source energy behind this unlucky energy that many people consider in their unconscious mind. Now, of course, I've already done a video about why Friday the 13th is considered bad or unlucky. But of course, we'll do a 2020 version, a updated version, so that we understand this from an either greater perspective now that the whole world is different from the time of me making the first video. So let's dig into it. Friday the 13th is associated with the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar were essentially the finance gods and goddesses, right? They were the masters of the currency energy. They understood currency from a deeper perspective. Only 10% of the Knights Templar were actual combatants. So 90% of the Knights Templar were non-combatants, meaning all they did was use their mind. It was only 10% that actually picked up the sword when it was necessary. So you have 90% of an organization that is majority made up of mentalists, of the secret arts. They got so powerful that they had the Pope at that time. I believe the Pope was the fourth, Pope Francis the Fourth. But just for clarification purposes, I'll have a double check here to make sure that I'm getting the name right. Nonetheless, this Pope was heavily in debt at this current point, which made him want to disband the Knights Templar so that he can free himself from debt. Because if you have someone like the Pope who is in debt to a organization, that would be the equivalent to a president being controlled by, let's just say, the mob or any type of gang organization where they actually call the shots and the president is just the front man or woman. If this was to ever be the case, and we know very well it may be in different parts of the world, as the government is always accused of corruption at some level. So who really knows? We know that things will be very chaotic. This will cause a paradigm shift. Because we could argue that the politicians themselves are the gangsters, not necessarily the street organizations. It really depends on how you choose to look at it because the setup is essentially the same. The goals are essentially the same. They just are on different sides of the scale. Getting back to the Knights Templar, having the Pope at that time in debt. This means that they were calling the shots. And because they were calling the shots, whatever they needed done, they can get done, which made them sovereigns at the time. So a sovereign could not be prosecuted by the courts in those jurisdictions. So, for example, a Knights Templar could not get arrested by police. Okay. Let's put it this way. Put it there. Because we put it in modern day terms. Modern day terms, let's just say if you were a Knights Templar currently in 2020, or whatever, well, let's just say any name, and you had a special type of badge or you had a special type of card, you could not get to the Knights Templar. You could not be prosecuted by the city or the state court. So that means in a lot of aspects of reality, you are able to supersede the law. And because you are able to supersede the law, in most cases, you will be able to get away with whatever you did. So eventually, this became the reason why the Knights Templar were disbanded, because they felt that they were superseding the law. Well, the Pope felt, or he didn't feel he was in debt, so he had no choice but to create a scenario that accused them of doing things that were true or false. So once he gained the power back, because this is the point, there's a lot of details here that are not necessarily correlated. Like anyone could essentially read about the Knights Templar, but you have to unlock your mind to be able to make the connections as to how does this apply to right now. Not in terms of the effect it had on history, but the energy that it produces in the unconscious of the people. There is a reason why they want us to remember this day. There has been many different events that has occurred in history. There has always been all these events, good, bad, or ugly, that have occurred in history on this same day. But for whatever reason, they want you to remember this particular day. So this remains in the unconscious of the people because it affects the collective consciousness. So the question then becomes, why is this day remembered? Is it because this is a Christian country in the West? Or is it more than that? The answer is there is more to the story than meets the eye. We know about Thanksgiving. We know about Christmas. We know about Valentine's Day. Every holiday has an occult history behind it. Every holiday has an occult history. And because every holiday has an occult history, there is a reason why holidays are perfectly selected to be remembered and celebrated by the collective consciousness. None of that is by mistake. And because none of that is by mistake, The energy that is generated from the remembrance. So even if you don't necessarily spend money or do anything on those particular days, just the fact that you have a remembrance to even make the decision to not do anything, you are still in the remembrance of that particular day. So even if you say, I'm not going to celebrate Thanksgiving, I'm not going to celebrate Christmas, I'm not going to celebrate Valentine's Day, whatever the day chooses to be, you are still taking part of that ritual by choosing to opt out of it, because you still have to acknowledge it. So if you acknowledge it, then you alter your routes and you alter your own behavior just to not celebrate the energy. You're still giving it your energy by going the extra mile to avoid any of the energy. But the energy is all mental. So the fact that you're still giving your mental energy to doing the opposite of the holiday, you are still acknowledging it. You're just feeding it the opposite energy. So you're not feeding it the positive energy, you're feeding it the negative energy, which is still energy, and you need both. When you have a positive charge and a negative charge, you get life. See, many people don't understand this, and this is why I have to speak through the veil. So from now on, I may just speak through the veil so that I can speak a little deeper. Because my voice is kind of muffled, so you really got to listen to even comprehend. Right, just a little more deeper, but I can get a little more deeper. So even if you ignore holidays, you're still giving it negative energy, so you're still giving it life, so the ritual is still successful. It still is successful because it's taking up your mental energy in one way or another, either in a positive light or a negative light. So if it's still taking your energy from the positive or the negative route, it will be successful. Many people think that all you need is positive energy or positive thoughts or just a positive charge, but we need both. So just like you need people to love what you do, you also need people to hate what you do. You need both energies. You can't just have all lovers and no haters, just like you won't have all haters and no lovers. It will always be balance of these two forces, because that's just simply mathematics. That's how reality works. Reality will always produce a positive charge and a negative charge, and those energies blend in an invisible current. So the positive appears to be over there, and the negative appears to be over there. But they actually are connected through an invisible link. Quantumly, they are quantumly connected, even though they appear to be at separate distances. This is how it works. This is quantum entanglement. Long as two atoms have corresponded at some point in history or time, they will always be reflecting each other, as long as they have had a previous encounter. So they can be millions of miles apart. As long as they have had a previous encounter, they will always reflect each other. One will always reflect that positive attribute. One will always reflect that negative attribute, regardless of their distance. So even if you have the positive energy in one house and the negative energy in another house, even though they appear to be different, completely on the surface, they are actually feeding each other from an invisible current. So this is why it works, because they don't care. And when I mean they, the ones who set the laws in motion, they don't care whether you participate or not, because it's about that quantum link. It's not about whether you spend your money or not. It's not about whether you say it out your mouth or not. None of that is even important in terms of the currency that is generated. As long as they can occupy your mental space, it will be successful. This is what influence is all about. As long as they are able to occupy your mental space, it will be successful, because you just are occupying the other side. And you need both. That's why we have conspiracy theories. That's why we have people that give out misinformation. Conspiracy theories and people who give out misinformation, they are perfectly selected to represent that negative attribute or that negative pole, where they think they're going against the system or whatever is at play when they are actually feeding into it. So for example, let's just say I made a negative video about anything. I'm still feeding that greater current. So I think I'm against, but I'm really for it because just me acknowledging it allows it to exist. The fact that it's occupying so much of my mental space, I am allowing it to exist so much so that I have to speak about it. All that's doing is occupying my mental space. So actually, while the ego thinks it's the winner by tearing it down, it's actually the loser because it's still being acknowledged to the point where you think you have to tear anything down. This is all psychology. This is all mind tricks. This is all trickery, tricknology. To make you think you're going against something when you're really for it. And we can use any example in this matter. So this can be applied universally because it is a universal law. This is a law of the universe. So whether we acknowledge it or not, this is the reason why it works. So we have to think on that level. It's not about whether you're on the positive or negative side. The fact that you're on any side is because of a universal law. The fact that you can say you can love one thing and hate another thing, that's universal law. That's not because you're special or because your ego works one way and other people's ego work another way. Everybody thinks they're right. No one looks at themselves as the bad guy. You can have two enemies. Neither one of them think that they're wrong for doing what they do or for standing on the side that they are standing on. Everybody thinks they're right in their egotistical mind. But on the greater perspective, there will always be an opposition. There will always be an adversary. And that's why the devil just represents the adversary. So it will always be a God versus devil, a good versus bad. That's a universal law. If a person has no enemies, it's as if they don't exist. If we just had a bunch of people that love us, even though people may think that's what they want, they may think they don't want hate, that they don't want chaos, that they don't want confrontation, that they don't want struggle. We may think in our mind that we don't want these things, but you actually have no control of the negative forces that are generated because that's the quantum connection in any reality. All good will generate bad. See, now we have to take it a step deeper. All good will generate bad. There will be no bad on the planet if there was no good on the planet. If you take away all the good, you're not left with the bad. There will also be no bad either. They both will dissolve. If you remove one, the other one dissolves. It cannot live its own reality. You can't, just like if you remove crime or the negative current, then you have no need for the positive people. You have no need for everyone who has been hired to keep all these things under control. When those people are no longer needed, they die off too. They don't continue to survive because what do they have to do? What would the police do without criminals? What would criminals do without the police? That's why they have to feed each other. It's a cat and mouse game. It's just a positive and a negative current, whether we acknowledge it or not. This is why the universal laws play out, whether we know it or not. And it's just about our acknowledgement of these laws. Everything makes sense. We are no longer confused about what is occurring. If the first law is mentalism, and I just described about how just you mentally acknowledging things keeps it on your mind and actually drains your energy, whether you realize it or not. And we also have acknowledged the law of polarity. That's 2 of the 7 laws. We have 5 more. And this ties into, once again, the 13th degree, because the 13th knocks off the balance of the 12. The 13 knocks off the balance of the 12, because the 12 can be divided perfectly in half, 6 by 6. But that 13 is going to create an uneven angle if you do that. So the 13th knocks off the balance of the 12. So the 13th takes you into the chaos. That's why it is called the serpentine current, the current of the serpent, because it knocks off that balance. It knocks off your ideology to think that you're actually moving forward, because it appears to look that way. When in reality, the positive and the negative charge, the law of polarity, is always in existence. So we don't allow illusion. For example, another law is a law of rhythm. That pendulum will always swing. If you understand the law of rhythm, then when times get bad or when bad things happen, you don't lose your cool. You don't get in your emotions. You don't get in your feelings, because you understand that the pendulum will always swing back at you. There is no way to avoid the pendulum, but you can adapt to the swings. We can't stop the 4 seasons. We can't stop the summer, the winter, the autumn, and the spring. You can't stop the cycles, but you can adapt to them. That means it's not about stopping the cycles, it's about adapting. So if the law is about adaptation and not trying to stop life from occurring, because many of us try to stop, whether it's positive or negative, things from occurring, when it's not about stopping or pressing a button for it to stop and go. It's about adapting to the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it will happen, regardless of how we feel. And the last thing you want is it to happen when you least expect it, because all that's going to do is trigger an emotional reaction from the unconscious mind, and it's just going to put you in a place where you don't want to be. Versus when you acknowledge it, because it is a law, not because you like it or because you don't like it. You just acknowledge the law. You acknowledge mathematics. When you acknowledge mathematics, you will not fail. When you adapt your life in accordance to the law, you will not fail. You will succeed. Not because you did something right or because you did something wrong. You acknowledge the entirety of the law. You understand the irregular currents of reality. You're not looking at life, okay, things need to be balanced. You get off of the scale. See, the real life and the real reality is off of the scale. While everybody's trying to balance the scale, the real reality is get the fuck off the scale. Because if you're able to get off the scale and still maintain your balance and you don't need a scale, see, this is a whole nother way of thinking. Oh, the scale is actually an illusion. So if the scale is an illusion, there really is no scale. Then what's real? Like, okay, well, you actually have to maintain within the chaos. Bring order to the chaos without the scale. Because the scale is just a tool of measurement. Because the scale is a tool of measurement, can you not measure with your eyes? Eventually, if you do enough measurement, you will be able to tell the measurements of something just by looking at it. Just by placing your observation on it, you will be able to know. That's when it becomes second nature, where you no longer need the scale. The scale is just a tool for you to eventually get off of it. It's just training wheels for you eventually to learn how to ride without it. It's not for you to, that's not the ultimate goal. People think their ultimate goal is to balance the scales. Use the scale to find your balance, then get off of it and see what happens. See if you're able to maintain when you claim to have found your balance. If you already have the balance, why do you still need the scale? Most people are afraid to step off the scale. They don't see reality outside of the scale. But again, because that reality is concealed, that reality is hidden, that reality is occult, that reality is negative. So if the scale is a positive energy, then the occult is a negative current. You got the positive current and the negative current, the right hand and the left hand. The right hand stays on the scale, the left hand gets off of the scale. It ain't about who's right or who's wrong. You have two sides because that's just the nature of reality. You will always have a dualism. So we don't get caught up in who's right, who's wrong. Should I be on that side or should I be on that side? Because that's not the energy of the high priestess. And this takes us to the 13th degree. Because on the tree of life, the 13th path is the path of the high priestess. And the high priestess takes you to Thoth, which is knowledge, which is the gnosis. So it is the high priestess that takes you to the dark side. Because she sits on the throne of chaos, but she appears to be civilized. That's the ultimate secret. The high priestess on the surface appears to be civilized, but how is she the guardian of the underworld if she's so civilized? You think she's just only positive? That she has no negativity within her? It appears that way. And because she gets you to believe that, that's why it works. Because you believe it's only one side, that a person can only be positive or only be negative. So that illusion is cast upon you. But if you realize, oh, this is the guardian of the dead, this is the darkest energy of them all. Because the high priestess corresponds to the moon. If the high priestess corresponds to the moon, and we know that the moon is not fixed, sometimes the moon is full, sometimes you don't see the moon at all, but it's still there, you just don't see it. The moon can appear to be invisible, but the sun can't do that. The sun can appear to be invisible and still there. That only happens, you could say, you need a veil of clouds. You need a veil of clouds, but the sun is not necessarily invisible. But what creates the veil of the moon? What creates the veil of the moon? The moon's veil is not created, it's always there. So when the moon is full, it's a beautiful sight to look at. But when the moon is new and it's completely dark, you can't see it, but it's still there. And it produces a completely different energy. That same moon that you were admiring for the beauty of it, that same moon that you were looking at and people kissing under the moon, all this good stuff, that same moon, when it becomes new, generates a darker energy. The energy that you may consider negative. So on one end, it generates a positive charge. Then at another time, it generates a negative charge. And that's the side of the moon you never see. We only see one side of the moon, as already explained. There's a side of the moon that you never see, but it always influences. Its influence is heightened when the moon is new. At the new moon, that dark moon energy is heightened, which is of a negative currency. That's how that goes. So we have acknowledged mentalism. We have acknowledged polarity. Now we have acknowledged rhythm. We also have vibration. Everything moves. Nothing is still. So if the universal law says everything vibrates, nothing not vibrates. So everything is always in motion, even though it appears to be solid. So even solid is not solid, because solid is not fixed. Even though it appears to be fixed, it's not fixed, because it's always vibrating. The human body appears to be fixed. You look at a person's face, you look at a person's clothing, all these things appear to be fixed, but they're actually not. It just appears to be that way. So it's another illusion. The universal laws help us to look beyond the illusion of what we think we are seeing, but that is not the actual reality. We're not seeing the real thing. The real thing is not seen. It is concealed. It is occult. So if everything vibrates, even though it appears to be solid, that means everything can be manipulated or change its form. This is why when you put fire on a solid, it burns. It would not be that way if it was fixed, because if it was fixed, it could not change. But we know energy is not created or destroyed. It just changes form. So when you set one element against another, it just changes form. Nothing is created, nothing is destroyed. The form is only changed, which activates the law of vibration. So when you put anything on fire and it appears to burn up and you appear to see ashes, nothing was created, nothing was destroyed. You didn't create the fire. The fire did not create, let's just say, the piece of paper. If you set a piece of paper on fire, you're not destroying the paper, and you didn't create the fire. The only thing that is occurring is a change of form. That paper has now changed form. That paper has now become less dense. The atoms that made up that paper are now transforming. You are transforming atoms. You're not creating or destroying, because that's backed by the law of vibration. Because if it was no law of vibration, you would actually be destroying or creating, but that's not what we're doing. All we can do is transmute. All we can do is transform. Mentalism, vibration, rhythm, polarity. What's next? We also have what is called cause and effect, or causality. The law of causality. Every cause will produce an effect. But what does that really mean? It's not as simple as we think. Well, if I do this, then I'm going to get this in return. There's a hidden layer to that law that you don't see. It's not as obvious and simplistic as it seems. It just appears to be that way once again. It just appears, okay, cause and effect. Every cause has an effect. If you think that's just the whole law, it's just that plain and simple, that there is no other energy behind that, then you completely have missed the point, which most people do, because they are fooled by the eyes, the hologram. They are fooled by the hologram that is produced by light. Light produces a hologram. Only 4% of the universe is light. 96% is dark. So any light is a hologram. But everybody's trying to follow the light. But we see, if we just look at the mathematics, why would you follow the light? Why would you only acknowledge the 4% and forget about the 96%? We hear people saying that they are light workers, meaning you're working within that 4% of the universe. What are you really saying? That you only acknowledge 4% of the universe? What light are you doing? What light are you acknowledging or creating? And that's only 4%. But if somebody was to call themselves a dark worker, that will be considered negative. But how so? If that's majority of the universe. See, someone calling themselves dark or a dark worker will be considered negative, but that is the majority of the universe. And somebody's calling themselves a light worker will be looked at as positive, and that's the minority of the universe. You see how backwards that is? But that's purposely done. That is a purposeful act. We were so quick to look at these images that we consider positive or we consider good as if they actually are. So if majority of the universe is dark, and you see people who are scared of the dark, that means they prefer the light. If you prefer the light or the 4%, what does that really tell you? But that's majority of the world. Majority of the world favors that 4%. They want nothing to do with that 96%. Because that's where all of the negativity is. That's what they have to fight against. They are the light, so they have to fight against the dark. They are the 4%, so they got to fight against the 96%. Is that what they are really saying? What is that 4% doing to 96? It's not even a challenge. But it appears to be so. It appears to be this good versus bad, this light versus dark, this blue versus red, this black versus white. We can look out and we can see, like it's always, but is it really? When everybody feels that they are right and everyone feels that they are the light, they are the light, right? The light of Christ, right? The light of God, the light, the light, the light, the light, the 4%. What are you really saying? When you say that you are the 4%, the 4% is just to illuminate the dark. That torch that everyone claims to have, that's for you to take into the dark and learn the secrets. You're supposed to take the light and travel the dark because that's where majority of the fun happens. But you only create the torch. Again, there's no creation, so you only manipulate the dark to produce light just so that you can have a guide in the darkness. So you only manipulate the elements to produce the torch so that you can navigate the dark, not stay in the light. What is that 4% really showing you? How much can you really get from 4% when you got 96%? Instead of manipulating the elements, producing the light, then navigating in the dark. So that you don't go mad. And all these people who claim to have negative experiences in the dark, those negative experiences is because they didn't have a torch. It's not that they did something wrong. You probably should have a torch. If you're trying to navigate through the dark, you should probably have a torch. But if you're going there without a torch, you may get lost. That's just common sense. So all the people that got lost, that becomes why you shouldn't be in the dark. But it takes an alchemist to create a torch. Just because they didn't know how to create a torch doesn't mean that you shouldn't be over there. You just have to have a mind to create the torch. And again, I'm using create loosely. To manipulate the elements, you got to figure all this out. How do I manipulate the elements to produce light so that I can navigate my way in the dark? That's a formula that you have to figure out. That takes a certain type of mind to figure out that formula. Then you need enough courage to navigate through the dark. which takes heart. So you need a mind and a heart. It's not enough to be smart. You got to be courage. You have to have courage or be courageous. It's not enough to be courageous. You have to have smarts. You have to have both. What's next? Mentalism. Also, correspondence. As above, so below. Most people just look at that, okay, what I think becomes real. Thoughts become things, right? If we think that's the end all be all, we're missing the point. If we really think that it's that easy to grasp a universal law, you don't need to know anything to understand it on that level. You don't have to go through years of initiation to understand that basic definition. The years of initiation takes you beyond the surface. What is that really talking about? As above, so below. What is that really talking about? As above, are we talking about the skies and below the earth? Is that above and below we're talking about? Are we talking about the mind and the body? Is that the above or below? Or are we talking about the astral body and the physical body? Because most people don't remember their dreams. Most people have no understanding of how to navigate the astral body. So if you have no awareness of the astral body at all, what's going on in your mind doesn't matter. Your mentalism doesn't matter. Because the astral body teaches you how to navigate. If you have no acknowledgement of the astral body, how do you know how to navigate? Because through cause and effect, we understand cause and effect. The cause is astral. If the cause is astral and the effect is physical, that means all cause is astral or etheric. If all cause is etheric, the results become tangible, the results become physical. Correspondence means the synchronistic nature between things. As we acknowledged before, that invisible quantum link. The astral body and the physical body are linked. They are not separate. They are together. However, most people are not in the world of cause. So once again, you can have the sharpest mind, the smartest mind in the universe, but that's not going to help you to understand your astral body. That's not going to help you to understand the world of cause. The smartest people in the world have no idea how to navigate the astral body. They don't even acknowledge it. It's not even acknowledged. They say that that's not real. That's Eastern thinking. We still have people who don't even acknowledge chi, who don't even acknowledge energy other than oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. They say there's nothing beyond the periodic table. We still have people who think that there's nothing beyond that periodic table, that is everything that can be, that was, and that is. So astral body, chakras, all these things that are Eastern, that comes from the East, is not acknowledged. But everybody comes to the West, what, to be smart. You have people who come from all around the world to the West. The smartest people come to the West. That's a fact. The smartest people from all around the world have came to the West. But these smartest people have not even acknowledged energy. Or if they do understand it, it's not accepted. And even if they do acknowledge energy, you're not told that you have control over it because you're told that you're just an atom in the infinite, vast universe that we're in, meaning you make no difference. That's a perspective that is painted, that we don't really matter. You're not told that you're the center of the universe, that you are a microcosm of the macrocosm, as above, so below. As above, so below. I am a microcosmic universe. So we are macrocosmic universes. That means that everything that you do matters. And the universal laws tell you that. Everything that you do matters. But it's not just your physical being, because that's just the effects. It is generated in the astral. Because once your physical body dissolves, your astral body remains. So if your astral body remains when the physical body does not, and majority of people have no idea how to navigate the astral body, what do they really know? Most people just want to get rich. Most people just want to be financially sound and to be comfortable in life. That's most people's dream. Most people's dream is not to understand how the astral body works, the world of cause. They are completely dissolved and concerned with the world of effects. The world of effects has its own laws. We have physical laws. We have the laws of the land. But to supersede, to be a sovereign, you have to acknowledge the fullness of who and what you are. You have to have knowledge of self. You have to know that we are not just what we see. So the physical body is your greatest illusion. It's a reflection of something more. Something that is dark, something that is invisible, something that you can't see. So the light of the physical shell is still not the real you. It's still not it's the 4% of you. The physical body is the 4%. The 96 is the astral. But this is the wholeness of reality. People want to have the physical body, let's just say, in a heavenly place. People want to place their physical bodies in heaven. But heaven is your own astral body. But we have a whole religion that tells us heaven is in the sky. That's their as above, so below. It's heaven and hell. As above, so below. If heaven and hell is connected, where does that place you? Hell influences heaven. Heaven influences hell. After all, the angel of hell came from heaven. If the angel that runs hell descended from heaven, how are they not interconnected? The motherfucker that runs it is connected to the heavens. See, but that's a mind fuck. People don't want to go that far. Heaven and hell is connected because the person that runs it came from heaven. How is it not connected? As above, so below. So it's all throughout the stories, but it's not taught in a manner that makes the universal laws make sense, that you can see what's actually going on with you. So if you have Satan and Lucifer, because Lucifer is only mentioned one time in the Bible, so Lucifer has no negativity attached to it. There is no passage that says Lucifer is negative. Lucifer is just referred to as the morning star in one passage in the Bible. There's nothing negative about Lucifer. All that negativity is placed upon Satan, who is the adversary. But Lucifer and Satan are looked at as the same. They're looked at as the same, but are they the same? No, because Lucifer is the purity. Satan is the darkness. But if you say something like Luciferian, they think it's dark. But Luciferians is dealing with what? The light bearer. Lucifer is the light bearer. Again, the torch. So if Lucifer is the torch and Lucifer becomes Satan according to the stories, what does that mean? What does that mean? If Lucifer is the light bearer, the torch, and Lucifer descends to hell, what is that telling you? Is that not just what I described? Is that not just what I said? Generating a torch to go into the dark. So as Lucifer is the torch, he had to descend into the dark. Is that not the path of initiation? Is that not alchemy? Is that not science? Is that not mathematics? In story form, mathematics and science in story form, is that not what mythology is? It's all mythology. It's all a psychological drama. Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, causality, and gender. The feminine and the masculine. Now most people are okay, yeah, there's men and women, right? That's the basic understanding, but if that's the end all be all, it wouldn't be a universal law. Either you have male or female. But it's deeper. How so? Because gender is a biological and a chemical thing. Because you have phases that genders go through. You have things like puberty, right? A masculine puberty is different than a feminine puberty because the chemicals are different. Depending on whether you're masculine or feminine, you generate a different set or patterns of chemicals. But it's not fixed. Why? Because you have certain species of animals that can change their gender. You have fish that can change gender. You have frogs that can change gender. You have various species that changes their gender. So it's not fixed. And we see that on a human level as well. People are changing their gender. But we see the same thing in nature. Also, plants are asexual. Plants can self-replicate. They don't need to have sex. So they are both masculine and feminine. So they are androgynous or asexual. So what is this really saying? On the surface, you're either male or female. But inside of yourself, if we're talking about the chemical nature of a being, we have everything within us. So even as a male, you have the feminine attributes. Even as a woman, you have the masculine attributes within you. You can call it a chakra system. Because the chakras are not just masculine, they're also feminine. You got the heart chakra, which produces love, but then you have the solar plexus, which produces courage. So you have masculine attributes and feminine attributes, and everybody has a chakra system. Everybody has the 33 vertebrae. Everyone has these attributes inside. So even though we appear to be either or on the surface, we are actually infinite inside. But it will appear as two when it's really one. That's why at the top of the tree of life, you have Kether. When the two are one, before the one becomes two, it is a one. And that's why they call it the one God. Before the two was one. Well, before the two was one, what do you have? Is energy positive or negative? So we go beyond the physical shell. Now we're just talking about ether. We're talking about energy. Because energy has positive charge and a negative charge. They have both. Energy is androgynous. Energy is not just masculine or feminine. When we breathe, we separate the masculine and the feminine, depending on what's going on. Depending on if you're male, if you're female, the separation of the energy happens inside of the body, not before, after. So energy is androgynous. Energy has the positive and the negative charge. It's only after the fact that the separation occurs, just like the laws of the universe, just like mathematics. It's all interconnected. That's why we have the serpent going up the chakra system or going up the 33 vertebrae. Because a serpent is a symbol for wisdom. So serpent magic is the magic that makes you wise. You become wise working with serpent magic or the Kundalini magic. But Kundalini, again, is not just positive. We have most people who don't acknowledge the negative side of the Kundalini, which is the tantric sciences, which is the psychedelic sciences, because the tantric goddesses also dealt with psychedelics. That's all a part of the culture, but they have completely taken out that aspect of it. So it just has become some cardinal sexual acts when it was never about that. Because you extracted a necessary ingredient. Because it's all in the art. You can see it in the art. These people are not in their normal state of minds. All of that tantric imagery it ain't nothing normal about that. That's highly unusual things occurring there. That's not coming from a person's conscious mind. You had to be in an alternative state of mind to even see something like that. If they're just documenting what they see, you had to be in an alternate state to see into the darkness, because that's not something you saw in the light. If you look at the art, that's not something that they saw in the world and they documented it. It's something you saw in an alternative state of mind and you documented it. You can say all deities come from that altered state of mind. Somebody saw something and documented it from the unconscious mind, not something they saw in nature. So art doesn't come from nature. Art comes from that 96% of darkness, which you have to get into an alternative state of mind to even perceive. But this is what makes a person wise, when they are willing to take the torch into the darkness. How else would you become wise if you're not willing to do that? So with that, that is the point. The 13th degree, the serpentine magic. Either be a part of the 4% or the 96%. And with that, 93, 93, 93.